何しとるもの、死ぬ覚悟くらいできてんだろ。お前も諦めて腹くくっちまいな。
A man? Oh, that's right. They still believe me to be a boy. With everything else that had happened, I'd completely forgotten how I was dressed. Their jokes were barbaric, but they both broke into raucous laughter? It's not my fault that you guys keep saying shit. He was right. If I remained with them, then I could easily hear something I wasn't supposed to. I didn't think he'd mention it for my sake, but rather as a possible concern for their group. I was still relieved when he'd brought it up. I could hear Tano's voice rise as everyone turned to look at him. He looked at them for a bit, then turned to me and mumbled in a voice I could barely hear. I was still apprehensive about what they might do to me, so I couldn't quite respond to him well. But he seemed to understand, and I curtly managed to nod. It was the most I could manage. All right. After returning to my room, I spent some time reflecting upon my state and still bounded hands. The rumors spoke of the Shinzengumi as vicious men, but they seemed more intimate, human to me. Still, their presence, or their being, lingered through me as if to say, we're not killers, but to protect our code, we must bring death. Remaining here is only bringing me closer to the possibility of them killing me. I don't know if I could convince them to spare me. Just as I have no loyalty to them, they have no loyalty to me, only the Shinzengumi. But then, they mentioned a man must always be ready to face death, so are they still mistaking me for a man? Could I possibly risk exposing my true identity in exchange for mercy on my life? But this could just easily backfire for me, and it could exact an even worse fate. I was truly at a loss for what to do. I'll get killed this way. So that way. I would tell them the truth. Perhaps if I did, they would understand my dilemma. Perhaps they think I'm from Kyoto as well. If I told them I'd only just arrived in Kyoto, they might lower their guard, or so I hoped. I didn't know anyone in Kyoto, and I had only come to look for my father. I haven't even told them I'm a girl. The rest perhaps could wait, but I felt that it might be wise to tell them I was a girl. I took a deep breath and screamed loudly. I'm not screaming. Excuse me, is anyone there? After a few moments, the door slided open, and several faces appeared around the edges. No, that's not it. I want you to hear me out. They all spoke as if they already consigned me to death. It was time to make my choice. I turned to Sato. He was cold, but I hoped that meant he would hear reason as well. I'm looking for someone. Unfortunately, I don't actually know anyone in Kyoto. I only got here yesterday afternoon. Wait, he knew I was a girl right off the bat? Smart man. Very smart man.
Mine. Mine. Mine.
Who are you saying mine? Oh my god. My sister.
Keep voice. Keep voice. Voice, voice, voice.
Oh my god.
Anyway.
You figured it out?
Had my fit for the day.
He's gonna have a stroke. Oh, alright. He looked at me silently and nodded. I nodded too, unsure of what else I could do. There I was, surrounded once again by the leaders of the Shinsengumi. Just the way he... That's funny. Kondo was nodding his head repeatedly as if he were agreeing with a very intelligent suggestion. For him to notice the softness of my features, it flattered me a bit.
女だ女だって言うが別に証拠はないんだろ。
What do you want me to do? Flash my breast? Proof?
証拠も何も一目瞭然だろうが。なんなら脱がせてみるか。許さんぞ。衆目の中女子に肌をさらさせるなど言語道断。だがな、それが一番手っ取り早いと思ったんだ。無理にとは言わないがな。でもよ、本当に女だって言うなら殺しちまうのもしどりねえよ。
Yeah, but what's kind of fucked up is the fact you see that I'm like a child, a boy that's young and regardless, you know, just got into Kyoto and you thought it was just okay and fucking chill to kill me. It's fucked up. It's kind of sexist a little bit. No, it's a lot sexist. That's it's still fucked up.
何甘いこと言ってるんだ。男だろうが女だろうが性別の違いは生かす理由にならねえだろ。
That's the guy from Banana Fish. That's the guy from Banana Fish. That's the guy from Banana Fish.
もっともですが女性に限らずそもそも人を殺すのは忍びないことですよ。今日の治安を守るために組織された私たちが無益な殺生をするわけにはいきません。
Nice try though.
結局女の子だろうが男の子だろうが今日の平安を乱しかねないなら話は別ですよ。
The Shinsengumi had already suffered a very gruesome reputation in Kyoto. If rumors spread that their men were thirsty for blood, things weren't likely to go well for them. Kyoto would banish them, and with no one to protect the people, the city would erupt into chaos. Each of their members deeply understood the consequences of behaving rashly in these times.
悪いが、お前の荷物を改めさせてもらう。どうやら江戸からここまで一人で来たみたいだ。荷物はわずかな着替えと一月分の小銭、それとスーツの手紙と手紙には幕府御殿医松本良順の名前。おそらくそうだ。お前の目的は何だ。
The minute my name was spoken, the vibe in the room shifted immensely. Everyone wore a stunned expression, eyes wide, and no words were uttered in response until...
土方さん、その名前は。おいおい、偶然にしちゃって行き過ぎだぜ。まあ待て。それを判断するためにもまず君の話を聞かせてくれるかな。
Akano's behest, I stood up to speak. My name is Jade Yukimura. Under the watchful eyes of the leaders, I sharply described how I came to face them, how I lived in Edo, and how I'd come to Kyoto to find my father, how lonely the city felt before I arrived.
出身も江戸だったのだな。父上を探して遠路はるばる京に来たのか。してお父上は何と。
My father is Kodo Yukimura. What are you talking about?
これはまさに高堂さんのものでした。まさか本当に高堂さんのご息女。
You know my father? The silence was enough to tell me that the revelation of my parentage caused a pronounced change in their behavior.
Yes. 。 知ってる。
What?
知ってる。
Are you talking about?
あなたは一体誰だ。
Huh? What information are you talking about?
いいから洗いざらい全部吐け。何しに今日に来やがった。
I just came to look for my father. I swear I don't know anything else.
私の行動さんが何をしてるか知っててここに来たんだろうが。
I was only aware of my father being in Kyoto for his medical work, but I haven't seen him since last summer. That's all I know.
土方、どうやら本当に何も知らないのかもしれません。
So what do you know about my father? Where is he right now? Please tell me.
ゴードンさん、現在新選組で探している。
You're after my father? So this means...
あ、勘違いしないでね。僕たちはゴードンさんを狙ってるわけじゃないから。
I see. A huge wave of relief came over me.
同じ幕府側の協力者なんだけど、実は彼、夏から行方知れずなんだよね。幕府をよく思わない者たちがゴードンさんに目をつけた可能性が。
I let out an audible gasp, but Sato continued without paying me any
生
mind.
きている鉱石に乱歩の利用価値がある存在。
I wasn't sure what else to do, so I nodded. My heart pounded in my chest, threatening to burst out onto the floor.
近藤さん、どうでしょうか。同じ人物を探す者同士、彼女の手を貸してあげてはいかが。
手を貸すとはどういうこ
高堂さんが見つかるまで互いに協力し合うということです。彼女に協力してもらうことで高堂さんが見つかる可能性は格段に上昇するでしょう。
Huh?
私たちがいくら探しても姿形を変えられてしまっては見抜くことは難しい。ですが高堂さんの娘である君ならば身なりが変わっていようと看破できますね。
Yes, of course. I nodded as I spoke while giving him what I hoped seemed like a steady, reassuring smile.
彼女が手中にあるというのは何かと都合がいいと思います。
どうだとし三男君の意見に俺は賛成だ。こいつが本当に何も知らねえっていうの。
It's true. All I know is that my father headed to Kyoto, but I don't know anything else. And about last night, I didn't see anything.
あの乱歩医の娘となりゃ殺しちまうのかも。
His eyes narrowed as he looked down at me.
夕べの件は忘れるっていうのは父親が見つかるまでお前を保護してやる。君の父上を見つけるためならば我ら新選組は協力は惜しまんと。
Thank you so much. I'd never imagined something like this. I was elated to have escaped death, but not only had I survived, but I found my first decent lead.
殺されずに済んでよかったね。とりあえずはだけど。
He gave me that same wolfish grin. There was no denying that my situation was still less than desirable, but it didn't matter for now. Yes, I'm very glad. Against all odds, at last, I'd found help where I'd never have expected it. The Shinzengumi. My first day in Kyoto was quite the adventure. In spite of everything I'd seen, my fortune was improving with every step. I still had a long way to go, but keeping positive was my only hope.
雪村君、よかったね。これからはよろしく頼むよ。
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure for me as well.
ああ、ケンさん。こんなことなれば、ここのような男女会では申し訳ない気がするんだ。ええ、そうですね。これはちょっと困りましたな。
Kondo crossed his arms and thought deeply.
不便があれば言うといい。その都度可能な範囲で対処し。
Aw, Sato. Thank you.
まあ女の子となりゃ手厚くもてなさんといかんよな。
心拍さん女の子に弱いもんな。でもだからって手のひら返すの早すぎ。
Mira looks like a chess star
いいじゃない。
smiling.
これで豚書が華やかになると思えば、新八に限らずはしゃぎたくもなるだろう。
I wasn't entirely sure I believed that sentiment.
とはいえ、ここでは女性として扱うのは難しそうです。大使として扱うのもまた問題ですし、彼女の処遇は少し考えなければなりませんね。
なら誰かの交渉にすりゃいいだろう。近藤さんとか三男さんとか。
やだな、土方さん。そういう時は言い出しっぺが責任取らなくちゃ。
ああ、そうだな。都市のそばなら安心だ。
そういうことで土方君、彼女のことよろしくお願いしますね。
てめえら勝手に決めてるんじゃねえ。
Nothing. It was just funny. As I watched their back and forth, some of my earlier reliefs began to ebb away. And this is how the Shinzagumi had come to look after me. February 1864. Mid-February 1864. I slid the door open and met a breath of cool morning air. Clumps of thick clouds trundled silently over the city, and usually strong wind driving them along. It's cold today. I shivered a bit and grabbed a jacket from near the door to wrap around myself. A week had passed since I'd begun living in the headquarters of the Shinzagumi. I was given a room of my own, but they made it clear that I wasn't to roam freely. They weren't the best accommodations, but given how close I was to being murdered by them, instead, I thought it was best not to complain. Still, do I really need to dress like this all the time? I sighed, staring at my feet on the cold floor. They had given me temporary accommodations, but it wasn't without its strict conditions.
お前の身柄は新選組預かりだぞ。女として豚書へ置くわけにはいかない。新選組にかくまわれている女が。そんな話が万一にも広まれば、よくねえ勘繰りをするやつも出てくる。噂を聞いて行動さんを狙っている奴らがお前まで狙い出すかもしれない。もちろん行動さんが狙われていると確定したわけじゃない。こういう不確 定要素が多い現状で不発な行動は取れねえってだからお前には断層を続けてもらう。なんだそれで
Claire. His reasoning was sound. Perhaps more than that, I knew he was concerned not only for the Shinsengumi, but also for the safety of my father and myself. I didn't have a choice regardless, but keeping this in mind made his orders more palatable.
それにたとえ君にその気がなくとも女性の存在は体内の風紀を乱しかねないですから私たち幹部のほか大使たちへも君の事情は話しません。情報はそれこそどこから広まるかわかりませんからね。
I understand the situation, so what should I do while I'm here?
当初じゃ何もしなくていい。部屋を一つやるから引きこもってる。
Harsh.
あれおかしいな。この子誰かさんの故障になるんじゃなかったですか。
いいか宗司、てめえは余計な口出しせずに黙った。
Before long, I'd been here for a week. I guess I don't have much of a choice. No sense in dwelling on what I can't do after all. Although it was still a new sensation, I've grown comfortable in dressing like a boy. Particularly the feeling of wearing pants. I straightened up and touched the kodachi that Hijikata had given back to me. This was a familiar friend of mine, the blade by my hip stretching back as far as I can recall. According to my father, this was an important heirloom passed down through the Yukimura clan. As such, I was forced to take lessons in swordsplay, making me well aware of what the blade was capable of. I have never cared much for weapons. Weapons hurt people, which is an obvious factor, but it was more than that, at least for me. For as far back as I could remember, any wounds I suffered healed at an incredible rate. Small cuts would disappear overnight. As a child, I thought nothing of it, but as I grew older, I began to realize that I was not quite normal. My father insisted it was a gift of the gods, but that I should tell no one of it. I didn't tell anyone, of course. I was afraid they would treat me like a monster if they knew. Ever since then, I'd done my best not to get hurt. I stayed as far away from blades as I could. Before I realized it, I developed a fear of them. My constant need for disguise was frustrating, but my condition left me more unsettled. Still, that wasn't the only thing on my mind. The rank and file soldiers treated me coldly. I'm not just imagining it, right? I learned having a private room was a privilege even for captains. For a child to arrive and receive better treatment than their own captains. No surprise, really, for the soldiers to hate me. True. I suppose I can't really blame them. I was enjoying the Shinsengumi's hospitality, and so I felt I should help them in some ways. But I knew nothing of the soldiers and their ways. I gave as much effort as possible despite Hijikata's commands for me to remain in my room. How does one calm the lonely, restless mind? I think for the soldiers, whenever the captains or other officers would look out for me, it appeared as if they were giving me special treatment. They're just watching me. To make sure I kept my mouth shut, they took turns keeping watch over me. Any mistake on my part would cause huge trouble, so they were making an effort to keep me contained. Even if I could speak with soldiers, what conversations could we share? Nothing. My only respite from any possibility of detection would be to stay alone.